My name's Lucy, and I've got a story to tell you. It's not your typical fairy tale, but hey, life rarely is. I grew up in a small town with my dad and little brother, Tommy. Mom passed away when I was just 10, leaving Dad to raise us on his own. From that day on, I became more than just a big sister. I was the lady of the house, helping Dad with chores and looking after Tommy. It wasn't easy, but we managed. Dad worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and I did my best to pick up the slack at home. As I entered high school, I realized college wasn't in the cards for me. Dad's wages barely covered our expenses, and Tommy was showing real promise in school. I knew then that my brother's education would have to come first. That summer, I landed a job at Joe's Diner, a local joint known for its greasy burgers and even greasier regulars. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Plus, it let me indulge in my secret passion, dancing. See, I'd always loved to dance. Back in middle school, I was even part of the cheerleading squad. But after Mom died, there wasn't money or time for such luxuries. So, I found other ways to keep the rhythm alive. At the diner, I'd dance my way through shifts, spinning as I delivered plates and shimmying between tables. The regulars loved it, often tipping extra for the show. One slow Tuesday afternoon, a college kid named Alex came in with his friends. As I twirled by their table, tray balanced expertly on one hand, I heard the distinctive click of a phone camera. Sorry, Alex grinned sheepishly when I raised an eyebrow at him. It's just, you're amazing. Mind if I post this? I shrugged, figuring it'd be forgotten by morning. Knock yourself out, kid. Boy, was I wrong. By the time my shift ended, that video had gone viral. My phone was buzzing with notifications, and #dancingwaitress was trending locally. As I walked home that evening, my mind was reeling. I had no idea what this meant or where it might lead. But standing on our porch, watching Tommy excitedly show Dad something on his phone, which turned out to be my video, I felt a glimmer of hope. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, and customers started flooding Joe's Diner just to see me dance. At first, it was overwhelming, but I quickly realized this was an opportunity one couldn't waste. Lucy, you've got to do something with this, Tommy insisted one evening as we sat at the kitchen table. He was scrolling through comments on the viral video. People love you. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. And do what exactly? I'm just a waitress who likes to dance. Dad looked up from his newspaper. You're more than that, honey. You've always had star quality. Their words got me thinking. Maybe I could turn this unexpected attention into something positive. That night, I created accounts on Instagram and YouTube under the name Dancing Waitress. My first video was simple, just me dancing while taking orders at the diner. I posted it before my shift and forgot about it. By the time I got home, it had over 100,000 views. Holy crap, I muttered, staring at my phone in disbelief. Language, Dad called from the living room, but I could hear the smile in his voice. From that day on, I started filming myself dancing everywhere. At the grocery store, trying on clothes, eating ice cream, even playing a goofy game of football in the park. People couldn't get enough of it. Before I knew it, I had millions of followers and was making more from ad revenue than I ever did at the diner. It was surreal. One day, Joe, my boss at the diner, called me into his office. I was nervous, thinking he might be upset about all the attention. Lucy, he said, leaning back in his chair. You're a good kid and a great waitress. But let's face it, you've outgrown this place. My heart sank. Are you firing me? He laughed, shaking his head. No, I'm telling you to quit. You've got a real shot at something big here. Don't let this old diner hold you back, he said, standing up to give me a hug. That night, I sat down with Dad and Tommy to discuss my future. I think I'm going to do this full time, I said hesitantly. The dancing, the videos, all of it. Tommy hooped, pumping his fist in the air. That's awesome, sis. Dad was quieter, but he smiled warmly. Your mother always said you'd do something special, Lucy. I think this is it. With their support, I took the plunge. I quit my job at the diner, though I still visited often, and focused on creating content full-time. It was scary, but exhilarating. As my following grew, so did my income. I started getting sponsorship offers and collaboration requests. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, I pulled out an envelope and handed it to Tommy. What's this? He asked, confused. Open it, I urged, barely containing my excitement. Inside was a check, enough to cover his entire college tuition. Tommy's eyes went wide, and Dad gasped. Lucy, we can't accept this, Dad started, but I cut him off. Yes, you can. Tommy's going to college, and that's final. I turned to my brother, who was staring at the check in disbelief. You've got the brains, little bro. Now go use them. Tommy launched himself at me, nearly knocking me off my chair with a bear hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you, he repeated, his voice muffled against my shoulder. As I held my little brother, I caught Dad's eye. He was beaming with pride, and I saw him discreetly wipe away a tear. Time flew by, and before I knew it, Tommy was off to college. I threw myself into my work, creating more content and growing my brand. My days were filled with dance routines, video edits, and responding to fans. It was exciting, but also exhausting. One autumn evening, I was scrolling through comments on my latest video when a notification popped up. It was from Tommy. Hey sis, guess what? I just landed an internship at Maxwell Trading. I nearly dropped my phone in excitement. Maxwell Trading was one of the biggest firms in the country. This was huge for Tommy. Wow, that's amazing. I typed back. We need to celebrate. The next weekend, I drove down to Tommy's college town. We met at a little cafe near his dorm, and I couldn't help but beam with pride as he told me all about his classes and the internship. As Tommy spoke, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of loneliness. Don't get me wrong, I was thrilled for my brother. But his success highlighted the one area of my life that was lacking, romance. As if on cue, a voice behind me said, "Excuse me, but do I know you from somewhere?" I turned, ready with my usual response about being the dancing waitress, but the words died on my lips. Standing there was one of the most gorgeous guys I'd ever seen. Tall, with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. I finally found my voice. Oh, maybe you've seen my videos online? I'm kind of known as the dancing waitress. His brow furrowed in confusion. Dancing waitress? I've never heard of that. I actually thought you might be an old classmate of mine. We stared at each other for a moment, then burst out laughing at the misunderstanding. Well, this is embarrassing, I chuckled. I'm Lucy. Jack, he replied, extending his hand. Mind if I join you? I promise I'm not some crazy fan. I glanced at Tommy, who was grinning like the Cheshire Cat. He stood up, gathering his things. Actually, I was just leaving. Early class tomorrow. It was great seeing you, sis. Before I could protest, Tommy was gone, leaving me alone with Jack. We ended up talking for hours about everything and nothing. It turned out he was a software engineer, working on a project at a nearby tech startup. We exchanged phone numbers when leaving the cafe, and as I watched him walk away, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something special. Over the next few months, Jack and I started dating. It was refreshing to be with someone who didn't care about my online fame. He treated me like a normal person, and I found myself falling for him hard and fast. One evening, Jack invited me to meet his parents. I agreed, and we set the date. The following week flew by in a blur of preparation. I agonized over what to wear, what to bring as a gift, and how to present myself. The night before the big day, I called Tommy for a pep talk. You'll be fine, sis, he reassured me. Just be yourself. They'll love you. The next day, Jack picked me up, and we drove to his parents' house in the suburbs. As we pulled into the driveway of a pristine colonial-style home, my nerves returned full force. We walked up to the front door, and Jack rang the bell. Moments later, it swung open to reveal a stern-looking woman with graying hair and sharp eyes. Jack's mother. "Mom, this is Lucy," Jack said, his voice unusually formal. "Lucy, this is my mother, Mrs. Eleanor Prescott." I extended my hand, putting on my best smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Prescott." She looked at my hand for a moment before shaking it briefly. "Likewise," she said, her tone cool. "Please, come in." As we entered the house, I could feel Mrs. Prescott's eyes on me, assessing every detail. Jack's father, a tall man greeted us in the living room. "Lucy, welcome," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "I'm Richard. We've heard so much about you." We settled into the living room, and Mrs. Prescott began her interrogation. "So, Lucy, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up?" "I'm from a small town about an hour from here," I replied. "Just me, my dad, and my younger brother." Mrs. Prescott's eyebrows rose. "And your mother?" I swallowed hard. "She passed away when I was 10. "Oh, I see," Mrs. Prescott said, her voice laced with something that sounded like disapproval. "That must have been difficult." I nodded, unsure how to respond. Jack squeezed my hand supportively. "And your education?" Mrs. Prescott continued. "Which university did you attend?" I felt my cheeks flush. "Actually, I didn't go to college. I started working right after high school to help support my family." Mrs. Prescott's eyes widened, and she exchanged a look with her husband. "I see," she said again, her tone even cooler than before. "And what is it that you do now?" I hesitated, glancing at Jack. We hadn't really discussed how to explain my unconventional career to his parents. "Lucy is a content creator," Jack jumped in. "She makes videos online." Mrs. Prescott looked confused. "Videos? What kind of videos?" "Well," I started, trying to sound confident, "I dance in different situations and share it online. It started when I was working as a waitress, and now it's become my full-time job." The room fell silent. Mrs. Prescott abruptly stood up. "I need some water," she announced, hurrying out of the room. It was clear that I had failed to make the good impression I'd hoped for. Mrs. Prescott's disapproval was palpable, and I couldn't help but wonder if this would spell trouble for my relationship with Jack. After that first tense meeting with Jack's parents, I was ready to throw in the towel. But Jack reassured me, and I decided to wait it out, hoping he was right about his parents eventually warming up to me. Meanwhile, life kept moving forward. Tommy called me one day, practically shouting with excitement. "Sis, you won't believe it. Remember that internship at Maxwell Trading?" "Of course," I replied, grinning at his enthusiasm. "What about it?" "They offered me a full-time position. And get this, it's a high-level role. They said my work during the internship was exceptional." My heart swelled with pride. "Tommy, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." A few weeks later, Jack surprised me with a romantic dinner at home. As we finished dessert, he got down on one knee. "Lucy," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I love you. Will you marry me?" Despite all my doubts and the issues with his parents, in that moment, everything felt right. "Yes," I exclaimed, throwing my arms around him. We dove into wedding preparations immediately. I decided to keep the engagement a secret from my followers, planning to surprise them with a wedding dance video later. Jack's mother, Eleanor, took an active role in the planning process. And by active, I mean she criticized nearly every decision I made. One day, we were at the reception venue, discussing table settings. Eleanor had ordered white tablecloths and light beige napkins. "What if we added a pop of color?" I suggested. "Maybe red napkins?" Eleanor's face contorted as if I'd suggested we use garbage bags. "Red? How garish." That's terribly unfashionable and in poor taste. I bit my tongue, trying to keep the peace. But later, when the venue coordinator suggested adding some colorful elements to the tables, Eleanor's tune changed completely. "Oh, what a lovely idea," she exclaimed. "Perhaps red napkins? And red vases for the flowers?" That evening, I vented to Jack about his mother's behavior. "It's like she's deliberately going against everything I say, even if she ends up contradicting herself." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Lucy, my parents are set in their ways. We can't change them. You'll just have to adjust." His words stung. "Adjust? Jack, your mother is treating me like dash." "Like family," he interrupted. "This is how she is with everyone. It's just her way of showing she cares." As the wedding day approached, I found myself caught between excitement for my future with Jack and dread of dealing with his family for the rest of my life. I tried to focus on the positive, the love Jack and I shared, the life we were building together. The big day finally arrived. As I stood in the bridal suite, my heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nerves. My dad knocked on the door, his eyes misty when he saw me in my wedding dress. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I squeezed his hand. "Thanks, Dad. Ready to walk me down the aisle?" He nodded, offering his arm. As we made our way to the ceremony, I felt like I was floating on air. This was it, the moment I'd been dreaming of. The doors opened, and the wedding march began. I walked down the aisle, my eyes locked on Jack's smiling face. But as we approached the altar, something caught my eye that made my steps falter. There, in the front row, sat Jack's mother, Eleanor. She was dressed head to toe in black, complete with a wide-brimmed hat and a thick black veil covering her face. She looked like she was attending a funeral, not her son's wedding. I glanced at Jack, hoping he'd say something, do something about this blatant display of disapproval. But he just stood there, smiling as if everything was perfectly normal. The ceremony began, and I tried to push Eleanor's appearance out of my mind. Before the vows, we had decided to read letters of thanks to our parents. I went first, turning to face my dad. "Dad," I began, my voice wavering slightly, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me and Tommy. You've been both mother and father to us since Mom passed away." I went on to recount funny and touching moments from our childhood, watching as tears of joy formed in my father's eyes and those of many guests. Then, I turned to Jack's parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, thank you for raising such a wonderful man. I'm honored to be joining your family today." As soon as the words left my mouth, Eleanor let out a loud, theatrical sob. "Oh, what a day of mourning this is," she wailed, her voice muffled behind her veil. "I've lost my son to this unworthy woman." The guests started murmuring in shock. I stood there, frozen, unable to believe what was happening. I looked to Jack, expecting him to say something, to defend me. But he just stood there, silent. Then it was Jack's turn to speak. He turned to his parents, his voice steady. "Mom, Dad, thank you for everything you've done for me. Your love and support mean the world to me." Eleanor's sobs grew even louder. Jack continued speaking, thanking various family members and friends. But as he wrapped up his speech, I realized something: he hadn't mentioned my dad at all. Just as I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, Eleanor rose from her seat, her black veil swaying ominously. "I, too, have prepared a letter for the bride," she announced, her voice ringing through the stunned silence of the church. This wasn't part of the ceremony. Eleanor cleared her throat and began reading from a sheet of paper. "Upon meeting Lucy, who I discovered was a YouTube celebrity and dancing waitress," she said, spitting out the words as if they tasted foul, "I experienced severe emotional distress. The shock of my son choosing such a person as his life partner has led me to seek extensive psychological help and medication." I stood there, my mouth agape, as Eleanor continued her tirade. The guests were murmuring now, some in disbelief, others in outrage. Therefore, Eleanor said, her voice rising, I demand that Lucy sign this document, agreeing to pay Jack's father and me $5,000 monthly for 1 year to compensate for our pain and suffering and to aid in our recovery." She marched up to the altar, brandishing a document and a pen. I stared at the paper, then at Eleanor, then at Jack, waiting for him to say something, to put an end to this madness. Instead, Jack cleared his throat and said, "Lucy, from now on, you need to live by the rules of our family. Sign the document." The church fell silent. I felt as if I'd been plunged into ice water. This couldn't be happening. This man beside me, the one I thought I knew and loved, couldn't possibly be asking me to do this. Suddenly, I heard a commotion from the pews. Tommy, my little brother, was on his feet and striding towards the altar. "Enough," he shouted, his voice echoing through the church. He reached us and physically pushed Eleanor and her document away from me. "I won't stand by and watch you humiliate my sister like this." Tommy turned to face the guests, his face flushed with anger and emotion. "My sister sacrificed everything for me," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "She gave up her own education so I could go to college. And how do I repay her?" He paused, taking a deep breath. "I was going to surprise Lucy and Jack today with a gift, a beautiful new apartment for them to start their life together. And for Jack's parents, I had arranged an all-expenses-paid trip around the world." Tommy's eyes narrowed as he glared at the Prescotts. "But now, seeing how they treat my sister, I can't in good conscience let this wedding continue." He turned to me, his eyes softening. "Lucy, you deserve so much better than this. I forbid you to marry this man who won't even stand up for you." Before I could respond, Tommy addressed the guests. "I'm sorry, everyone, but there will be no wedding today. Please feel free to take your gifts and go home." Then he looked back at me, a small smile on his face. "Lucy, that apartment and trip? They're yours now. You deserve a vacation a lot more than these people do." I stood there, frozen, as the church erupted into chaos. Guests were talking loudly, some were leaving, others were applauding. Jack was arguing with Tommy, and Eleanor was wailing dramatically. As the applause for Tommy's words died down, another figure stepped forward. I recognized him immediately, Mr. Daniels, the president of Maxwell Trading, where Tommy worked. Mr. Daniels approached the altar, his face serious, but kind. He turned to me first. "Lucy," he said, his voice carrying through the church, "I want to thank you for raising such an exceptional young man. Your brother is a credit to our company." He shook my dad's hand warmly, then turned to face Jack. The smile faded from his face, replaced by a stern expression. "Now, I believe it's time to discuss some company rules," Mr. Daniels said, his tone businesslike. "At Maxwell Trading, we have a strict code of ethics that all our employees must adhere to. This includes treating others with respect and dignity, both in and out of the workplace." Jack shifted uncomfortably, his face growing pale. I glanced at Tommy, who was watching the scene unfold with a mixture of surprise and, was that satisfaction? Mr. Daniels continued. "Based on what I've witnessed today, it's clear that you, Jack, do not align with these values. Therefore, I'm afraid I must rescind the job offer that was extended to you." Gasps echoed through the church. I felt my jaw drop. "Job offer? What job offer?" As if reading my mind, Mr. Daniels explained. Jack approached Tommy, asking him to use his influence to secure a position at our company. "We were considering bringing him on board, but after seeing his true character today, that's no longer an option." Jack sputtered, trying to form words. "Mr. Daniels, please, I can explain." But Mr. Daniels held up a hand, silencing him. "There's nothing to explain. Our decision is final." Eleanor let out a wail that could have shattered glass. "You," she shrieked, pointing a bony finger at me. "You've ruined my son's career. You've destroyed everything." Ignoring Eleanor's continued sobbing, I turned to Tommy. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Tommy pulled me into a tight hug. "That's what family does," he whispered. As the guests began to file out, many of them stopping to offer words of support or sympathy. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the future I thought I'd have, relief at escaping a clearly toxic situation, and excitement for what might come next. As I stepped into my new apartment, my jaw dropped. The place was absolutely stunning, all modern furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows with a breathtaking city view, and an open-plan layout that seemed perfect for, well, dancing. Without missing a beat, I pulled out my phone. "This calls for a video." I set up my phone and hit record. There I was, twirling through my new living room, sliding across the hardwood floors in my socks, and even attempting a cartwheel. I uploaded the video that night, adding a brief explanation. "New chapter, new home, same dancing waitress. Thanks, Tommy." The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in, most expressing relief that I seemed happy and congratulating me on my escape. It was then that I noticed something odd in the comments. People kept mentioning of mother-in-law in black. Curiosity piqued, I did a quick search. My eyes widened as I found dozens of videos from my almost wedding, all featuring Eleanor in her morning outfit, wailing and making demands. She had become an internet sensation overnight, for all the wrong reasons. The next few months flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Then, one day, Tommy approached me with a mischievous grin. "Hey sis, remember that world trip I promised you?" I nodded, excitement bubbling up inside me. "Well, how about we make it a family affair? You, me, and Dad?" And just like that, we were off. 3 months after my almost wedding, I found myself boarding a plane with my 2 favorite men in the world, ready for the adventure of a lifetime. Our first stop? The sun-kissed beaches of Australia. As soon as my feet hit the sand, I knew what I had to do. I set up my phone, hit record, and started dancing. The result? A video of me attempting to do the Macarena while dodging waves and trying not to fall over in the soft sand. It was ridiculous, it was uncoordinated, and it was absolutely perfect. From there, we jet-set across the globe. I danced in front of the Eiffel Tower, much to the amusement of other tourists. Attempted a tango in the streets of Buenos Aires, with a very patient street performer, and even tried my hand at Bollywood-style dancing in Mumbai. I think I'll stick to my usual style. Each new place brought new adventures, new dances, and new memories. As for Jack? Instead of sadness or regret, I felt grateful. Grateful for the lesson learned, for the bullet dodged, and for the incredible journey I was now on.